Welcome to Heller Baarns-Pratt. We're having a fantastic time, and of course, before the show, we sit and complain at each other, call each other names, laugh, and having a fantastic time. This is going to be a great hour. I'm really excited about it. And Johnny, Sean, how in the world did you, Johnny? How in the world did you two meet? It's been what, 20 weeks now since you started interacting with each other. Is that even close?
No, we've been. Well, I think we've more than 20 years. I think we've been pals.
A long time.
We're the frickin' frack of the industry. Sean, I don't know if you is freakishly tall, ungangly, if you will, and I'm normal. Hang on, before I get my dog wants come in. My dog wants come in. We're making fun of Sean Pratt. Just go out and let him know where we are. Okay, so Sean and I met. I'm gonna say, God, where we probably early 2000s. And I think this was in New York City during Fleet Week. This is how Sean got his start in coaching. He'd stand at the corner of the corners of the world there in Times Square in a long, flashy coat, and he'd say, "Hey, fellas, you want to go to a dark room and learn about audiobooks with me?" And it was a big hit, and he made a fortune, which he sadly spent on his addiction. He became addicted to St. Joseph's aspirin for children.
Cocaine and hookers.
Yeah, and then we had to kind of wean him off. He spent a lot of time with me. We moved on to a Pez candies, and eventually now he's just doing Luden's cough drops. So it's really been a step down, but it's some tough going there, but he learned a lot, I think, during his sessions in the booths with strangers. He put that to work now in his teaching.
Title of a book for you.
Yeah, in a booth with strangers.
Yeah.
By S. Pratt.
That's right. All right.
So I hope you've all learned about voiceovers. Thanks for being with us.
Yes. See you next week.
The truth is, I don't remember. I think we met at an APAC or something. I don't remember. But we hit it off, and we've traveled the globe, for God's sakes. Did you go to Canada with me ever?
No. The closest we got was Seattle there.
Yeah. So
we've been to England.
Seattle, Denver, Texas. We've been to England. We've been many places together. Sometimes with Anna and sometimes with Joanna, but Sean and I definitely together many times. Many wonderful tales to tell. I'll tell you one thing, and Don, you'll remember this from the New England Narrator Retreat, which, by the way, is October 13th. Sean is active during the day. You see him all day, and all of a sudden, right after dinner, he's just gone. I have no idea where he goes. And I found out, and this is true, the guy is like 6'12", so he's big, and he takes baths, adults, which is where you lie in originally hot, clean water that turns kind of murky once you're in it and cools off, and you lie in like it's a Pratt soup, and he's in there for a long time. Then I never see him again. So I don't know what that's about. Sean?
I need to decompress after the full Johnny experience. The truth, I'm an introvert, and eventually schmoozing with, I know schmoozing is part of the job of being a coach and with these events, but I reach a point sometimes where it's just I'm fried. I'm trying to get better. Johnny has mocked me mercilessly for years, so I am trying to be a little better about pacing myself. So after dinner to go hang out with everybody, but I'll be there at the retreat this year too.
Being an introvert is odd because here's Don, who's not an introvert. Here's me, who's clearly not an introvert. And knowing you as I have, and all the years seriously we spent together, I would not. I mean, in bigger social things, you're kind of introverted, but you and I, it's never been that. So it's hard for me to
when
sense
it's one-on-one or just a couple people, I'm very effusive. But when you're working the crowd and when you are a coach, as you know, it's like you're on. It's like being, I hate to say, it's like being a casting director at APAC. It's the story of oh gosh, she runs the audio company out in California. Deb.
Oh, Deb Dean.
Yeah, there's a famous story of her at APAC, I think it was, and she's just, she's beat. So she goes to the ladies' room to use the bathroom, and while she's in the stall, on either side of her are these narrators trying to talk to her while she's going to the bathroom. I'm like, it feels a bit like that because everybody wants to talk with you about something, and you want to be open and friendly about it. But
you got to draw the line somewhere.
You got to draw the line somewhere, But yeah, no. I don't
You
get me
know,
wrong. I
Lyndon
enjoy doing
Johnson,
it a lot. It's just that it just wears me out.
President Lyndon Johnson used to have meetings with staff members while he was on the
On
throne.
the toilet. He had
Yeah,
a special phone.
yeah. No, literally, he did. He had them because he wanted to demean them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There. I would hate to have been the secretary having to sit outside
I'd hate to have been anywhere near the man.
dictate.
Okay, so now let's talk. So tell us what you're working on right now, and then and also, by the way, you guys out there in the listening and watching land, feel free to get your questions in because this is a chance to chat with Sean Pratt. Maybe let's go over some of Sean Pratt. How long have you been in the audiobook world?
I started narrating, as my kids like to say, in the late 1900s,
Yeah.
in 1996.
Okay.
So that it'll be 30 next year will be 30 years, which
Yeah.
blows my mind.
Yep. It's been a long time for a couple of us, and it's been rewarding for at least one of us. It's nice.
Someday you might be good at this.
Yeah, I know. You think so?
You,
Think
you,
so.
you haven't
1,200
yet,
books.
Sean.
I'm nearly there.
Sean, over the 30 years, have you done anything you're proud of?
What are your
There's
current
anything to be
projects?
proud
What's the
of.
coolest thing that you're most excited about that's up and coming?
Well,
I heard you had a book. I'm gonna preempt
yes,
that. After
yes.
asking
I
that
was gonna say,
question, I'm not gonna
shall I
let you
do that?
answer. Tell us about your book that you have coming up.
All right. So it's a work in progress. It started years ago from an experience I had as a young actor, making terrible decisions and getting into really stupid projects, plays in theater. And out of that, I began to formulate this process where I could ask the right questions about any project that came in the door. And I began to teach that as a workshop to actors when I was living in DC, and I would teach up and down the East Coast and at my alma mater, the acting school I went to basically show them how to field an offer. So if you have your questions that you have beforehand and a structure in place, when an offer comes in, you can then analyze it for your counter offer. So um, I used to call it the name of their workshop used to be called acting work, when to take it, when to turn it down, and how to know the difference. And then after I got into audiobooks, I just gave it a bit of a twist and made it about VO work in general. But every time I did the workshop, I'd always have somebody come up from the audience after the fact, and they would say basically this. They'd say, "Well, I'm a freelance actor or a freelance, VO, but my day job, I'm also a freelance X, a bookkeeper, web designer, photographer, whatever." And they would say, "Your system can work in my other line of business as well." And that's when the light bulb went on. And I thought, if I expand the scope of this slightly, I can speak to any freelancer. So over the last 2.5 years now, I've been nibbling away, putting this thing on paper. I've got the first draft finished. Right now, the working title is called "No!" exclamation point. The Freelancer's Guide to Turning Down Work.
Well,
And
do you have
in
a
it,
chapter on working with freelance neurosurgeons who work from their basement?
absolutely, it's all in your head. It's all in your head.
That's
Um,
the chapter.
yeah. so the idea is that I wanted to open it up to anybody who's a freelancer.
Yeah.
So I'm in the midst of this, and this is now I'm exploring a very new world. In even though we live in the world of publishing, Johnny, and in audiobooks, my first book, To Be or Wanna Be, was self-published. I used it as a manual, when I would teach.
Yeah.
That one's for performers, but this one's for everybody. And so my hope I'm talking with a couple of publishers to see if they are interested. I think I've got some nibbles. I'm hoping to have the book wrapped up by the end of this year. But I've been a bit of a victim of my own success with the volume of students I have coming on board and the number of projects I'm booking, which was a lot more than I had anticipated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, a lot of them they're too good to turn down. And that's a problem because, it's like, oh, I really want to do an Agatha Christie mystery, or I really want to do this book on this topic. And then suddenly you're like, when do I have free time to work on this book? Because it takes a lot of, I don't know about anybody else out there who's a writer, but it takes a lot of, the hard drive to put words on paper that sound coherent and,
Yeah. Let me ask how you schedule it. Do you have a set time? Do you like get up in the morning, and then like every morning at 9 or 10, you spend 2 hours on your book? Do you have it set up that way, or is it when
Well,
time?
it was that way, and then I had this influx of students come in. So normally I'm up at 6 and I go to the gym, work out, come back, and then prep for the day with my, get ready for students. And I was setting aside time because I'm very much about time blocking through my day.
Hmm.
So I was doing that, and then suddenly I had a whole new wave in, and I was like, the only way I can accommodate everybody is to give this up. And because let's be honest, it's nice to make money and sock it aside.
Yeah, yeah,
So now what I've been trying to do is take little sabbaticals, like take a full day or a couple of days and have nothing going on, just writing,
right.
and to get it done.
I,
But yeah,
I'll
it's
say,
been
and
tricky.
we're all three of us are creative, and our audience is very creative. One of the problems I find is that I like to schedule as much. Some people say, "How do you do so many books?" I like to work. I'm a workaholic. My downtime, because I need to be writing, I want to do that too, but I'm not disciplined enough. And when I have a free day, I blow it. It's just, I just I may go to the gym, but I do stuff, but I don't do stuff I need to do or I should do. I'm happy to watch, Lord of the Rings 15 times. Um, yeah, and I'm not sure that's it. And I've always found you boring as it is, which is totally in character for you. Um, I've always found you to be so organized with your time. You really are.
Yeah,
It's
it's
irritating, it's annoying, but it's
yeah,
really good for
but I
you.
get a lot of, and I pack in more irritation and annoyance for you by being
Yes.
so disciplined. You
Yeah,
see,
this is why it's good where a number of states separated us
right?
because you're
Exactly.
hey,
Yeah, there'd
yeah,
be violence involved, and that.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I know I talk all the time about how you kid me about my 5 steps of this and 12 things for that, and that's just how I think. I'm very
yes,
much organized like that. So, and what I try to do with my students who come to me, especially the ones who are they say a type B personality who's not really good at scheduling, I really have to hammer home to them that if you're going to do audiobook narration for a living, you absolutely have to have a certain level of self-discipline because it's so easy to go down a rabbit hole even when you're in your booth.
yeah.
Right.
You'll look up, you'll start researching a pronunciation that you missed, and the next thing you know, you've watched 5 YouTube videos and so on. And
Oh god. Yeah,
yeah,
every
so I
time I'm in a book, I'm sure this happens to you as well. You have to look up something says something. So you look it up on YouTube, whatever it is, something
yeah,
specific to the book. But then on the right side of YouTube, they have all those videos that they've geared like Jiminy Glick shows up all the time. So I think I always stop to watch. So if it's something or Groucho Marx or something, so
right.
something I'm going to want to watch. So I'm trying to look up, Bahrain or something, and then and then there's Jiminy Glick talking to whoever, and
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
gone for an hour, and I'm like,
yeah.
crap. Not only have I wasted my time, but I forgot what I looked up.
Well, and the other problem is that as far as scheduling is I'm a workaholic. I love
Yeah,
what I do.
I think we all are.
And the best thing about working at home is the work is just right there, but the worst thing about working at home is the work is just right there.
And
Yeah.
home is right there. Yeah.
And Sunday, Anna has really hammered home for me the value of taking a day off every week because I used to work 7 days a week all the time. And so now I really do try on Sundays not to work. So we doing,
Yeah.
whether going for a bike ride or going on the
Yeah.
beach
And for
or
those at home, we're talking about Anna Clements here. That's that's
yes,
that's his
Anna Clemens,
significant other. Just
right. And
not
the
everyone knows your whole life, Sean. You got to.
so it's important and of course I found having scheduling a day off is also valuable because you
Oh,
can hit the week you know refreshed. But yeah, no, it takes the other thing that I've also learned about myself and that I try to teach my students is we all have a biorhythm. We peak and valley all day long about focus and energy. So if you know that there are certain times of the day you're just more on than others, that's when I'm a morning person and a late afternoon person. That's when I'm really firing on all pistons. So
hmm,
from like 9 to noon or 1, I can teach and record if and then from say 4 to 6:30, that's another good time for me to work. And in between, I'm having lunch, taking a nap, doing whatever. But if you know that about yourself, then you should schedule your time accordingly. Now, of course, the world isn't perfect. Like when the kids were little, you have to work when they're at school, and that's just the way it has to be. Or you work at night because they're doing traffic work in front of your house. But I think
You
holding
send your
yourself.
kids out to do traffic work in front of your
Yeah,
house?
well, you know, you got to make the mortgages got to get paid. You know, they
Got to
want
teach them
shoes, they
about
got to earn those shoes. That's
got to
all I'm
teach them
saying.
about pain, right? Is that
That's right.
so? James Romick brings up something here that he talks about, and this happens for a lot of us that have been around a while, where you have a video that you created a while ago for people who always say, because my mom says I have a great voice, I should do audiobooks, and
Yeah.
then most of us that have been in the industry a little while say, well, go watch this Sean Pratt video before you do that. How'd you come up with that? What was the genesis of that whole thing? Do you first explain what it's about, please?
Yeah, so the actual video is now this video is, gosh, it's probably 15 years old now, maybe longer. But um, uh, I would go to actor parties in Washington D.C. or wherever I was at, if I was out of town working or whatever, and people would find out that I did audiobooks, and then they would corner me and they'd pepper me with questions about the industry. And of course, being an actor, you like to talk about yourself. And I would tell them all this stuff, and then I would say, well, if you're interested, maybe with some coaching or a class or a workshop I might be doing, or this and that, you're welcome to follow up. And they would never do it.
Right.
And then I was like, wait a second, I'm at this networking event for myself too, and I got tired of having to go through that spiel only to not for it to fall flat. So I made this video on a lark one day, and uh, what I tell them, what I say to people all the time who come to me like, I have a good voice, and I'm like, talent's not the. I said it's about temperament. Do you have the temperament to sit in a little tiny box for hours and hours and direct yourself and do the engineering and all these pieces of it? If you don't have that temperament, it'll never move forward.
Right.
So um, basically, it's a little test where I tell them, find a book they like. This is old school, get the book itself and put it on the book stand. Now, of course, you'd have your iPad or your Kindle, and get into a little tiny, like literally a closet or an alcove. Turn the lights out, shine a light on it, and then perform it for at least an hour a day. If you make a mistake, you back up and hit the sentence again, and you do that an hour a day for 2 weeks. I say in the video, and I said that will tell you faster than anything else whether or not you have the temperament to do this. And what's funny is when you look at the threads, the comment threads underneath the video, sometimes you'll have somebody go, oh my God, I'm so excited. This was great. This is exactly what I've been looking for. But other times I'll get one, they'll say, I did your test and it convinced me that I absolutely never, ever want to do this thing in my entire life. This was the worst thing I ever did. Thank you, Sean. So I feel like I did my job either way.
I think it's important that we all pay attention to the fact that this is look, everybody has a voice,
Yep.
and everybody can speak basically. It doesn't mean that you're cut out for the voiceover game. Plain and simple. And we all three, but I want to bring up something about all three of us in our teaching styles. We all have different styles, different techniques, and different ways. And I'd like to have all three of us talk about it.
Mm.
Because I've experienced all three of us. Don, for example, I find amazingly knowledgeable about what he's talking about. I mean, it's like he invented it, the tech. I mean, he just knows it so thoroughly, and he has an excitement when you teach that is catchy. It's hard. I find you go really fast and make assumptions that I know things I have no clue about, and I have to go back and slow you up. That's my experience. But your excitement level and your knowledge level is second to none in anything I've ever tried to understand. How do you feel that's accurate?
I have a tendency to enjoy really understanding whatever topic, and I'm a forever curious individual. I've been reading books my whole life, starting with Reader's Digest, but I would read things cover to cover and tech stuff. And anything that I'm involved with, I tend to over prepare in terms of understanding it. My dog just came in, and I bought a course on dog training. I'm not going to try to do it myself, meaning I love standing on the shoulders of the ones that have come before me. And so when I got my dog here 2 years ago, we started walking every day. Anyway, it's an example.
Yeah.
And I've just, whatever topic, I don't know. I'm probably, there are other people that are wider, but for a lot of subjects, I'm very deep, and I like doing that, and I'm excited about it. And then the other thing for me, I've had some of the best mentors in the world that I ran into as a young guy and taught me some things about coaching and teaching. And so as a style, I love finding analogies for hooking something new onto something that somebody already knows. And if we can do that, it makes the learning process. So I'm still a student. And I used to hate the term expert because now people hang that on you. You guys get this all the time. You guys are experts at this. I hated the word expert because I always thought that implied I didn't have more to learn or that I was already arrived. And I've never
Yeah,
thought
that
of
you've reached
any.
the top. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but you guys don't
Johnny
think that
Johnny
way.
prefers the Johnny prefers the name demigod. I think that's a good one.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
God of
So
Demis.
anyway,
Yeah.
I am excited about all this stuff that I get to teach and coach on, and then I'm a student too. And I think like taking a day off and learning about how to even be better. Sean has been doing this for 30 years, and he's actually still refining what he does, looking for ways to make it better. And he uses other areas of life to help him be better at his narration and at his coaching. And now he's transmitting that to other people. And that, I think, is the great coaches have never stopped learning. They're always students someplace as well.
Yeah.
Sean also you have your course. What's it? 15 weeks? 15 months? I mean, when people
Me?
sign up, Sean. Yeah,
It's
Sean.
14 lessons. So basically, it's a little over a year. Basically, we every 3 to 4 weeks we meet.
And Sean mentioned earlier, I made fun of him for this. I make fun of him for everything.
Everything.
That's how we love. But he does have he is a kind of coach. I forgot he has you'll tell me the words in a second. But Sean does have, when you come to this type of segment in the world of nonfiction, it's pretty rigid how these books are set. And when you come to this given type of thing, here's Sean's 5 steps to make that palatable. Here's Sean's 8 steps to make that. And he does, and while I do make fun of him, he does have it down. He has it down to a mathematical, rigorous science, if you will. And he shares that knowledge, and it does help you whenever you encounter that type of thing in your book. Is that accurate, you think?
Yeah, no, there's a lot more structure and I would say guardrails. There's more guardrails or like structure, rules, whatever you want to call it for nonfiction.
Path to follow.
Right. We're limited, because something is like the narrative. The narrative in fiction always is linear. A leads to B leads to C. You don't play with narrative in nonfiction because that's not the way we want to learn things. Now in fiction, you can have a story that jumps back and forward through time throughout the piece, right? So because of the general way we take in information, there is a structure to that. And so my goal, trying to always be better, is trying to unlock what that structure is and then come up with a lesson for it. And that appeals to the way I think.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
a puzzle. It's like I go, okay, I want to play with this concept that I realize I'm doing in my own narration. What is it? I have to identify it, give it a name, be able to explain it very simply to myself. Then I have to find a piece of material that shows that so I can give that to the student to work on. And then they have to come back and I give them feedback. All those steps I think are really exciting. They refine the idea down again and again. And I get feedback from students like, well, what do I do when I encounter this? Oh, I should do a class on that. I should make a lesson. But the way I think is very strategic. That's the difference. Johnny is generally a tactical coach where he works live a lot, and I'm a strategic coach. Although I finally gave in, I had a lot of students over the years wanting to know would I ever do a tactical, like read live for Sean nonfiction. So I've just started this thing called Saturday at the Dojo. So once a month, I'm only having 4 or 5 of my graduates and current students who can come in and read live for me because they know the concepts. I already taught them all that
Yeah.
stuff. But eventually, I think I'll open it up. Maybe do every so often do a Saturday at the Dojo for anyone who's done a certain level of nonfiction.
Right, right. Yeah.
Because
X number of
I
titles.
work with John. Yeah, I worked with John Florian at VoiceOver Extra for more of my webinars for newbies or anybody who wants to walk in the door. And I wanted a higher level class to, Johnny, you know what it's like when we're working together. the person only has a couple of minutes up on stage with us when we're working. So we have to pick something very quickly to focus on. And you're not only teaching the student, you're teaching the
Everybody.
room.
Yeah.
But I wanted to have a chance to spend 15, 20 minutes on half a paragraph, if I wanted to
Yeah.
really get
Yeah.
into something, the nitty gritty. And I can't do that the way my coaching, because when you come in, it's a class that's already been structured. We're going to talk about
Right.
X, Y, Z, and then these 5 things and all that. It doesn't give a lot of room. But once again, I built a program that I would want to go to.
Can you
So that's just what I think.
can you drill down on tactical versus strategic and how that breaks down for you?
Sure. A tactical coaching would be when so we like when Johnny and I do a workshop and we have, you know, Gus Johnson come up with his piece to narrate. So he'll read a chunk of that. And then Johnny and I keep it loose. We've done it for so long. One of us will take the high sign, like I'll take this one. And then you go, okay, and you start to work through just that little paragraph. And so they read a little bit more. Now stop, come back here, do this, try that. Here's the lesson. Think about this, do it again. And we roll through that for 10 minutes, and then that's their time. So tactical coaching is correction in the moment. So like I send a lot of my students say to John, like if you want a coach to direct you while you're doing demos, so you go to Johnny or another coach, and when they're performing, they're getting feedback from Johnny right then, so they can record the best demo possible. That's tactical coaching. And strategic coaching is like going back to college, where the professors, you turn in all your homework before you meet him or her, right? They review it. And then the session itself is really a conversation about all the different ideas and checklists. Because I don't only just do performance stuff in nonfiction, we're talking about business and contracts and networking, promotional materials. Those are all built into the program. And you can't teach that tactically. I mean, I have teaching materials that they refer to later, but it's more like a college class. And it just, by routinizing it that way, I was able to work with a lot more people. Because as Johnny can attest, when you're doing tactical coaching hour after hour, it's exhausting because you never know what they're going to bring to the room.
Yeah. And you become
material.
emotionally involved the whole
Yeah,
time.
you have to stay. You have, as a coach, you have to be one, if not 2 steps or more ahead of the student. Literally, while when Johnny and I do a workshop and somebody comes up to read, we're listening. You can see it on our faces if you pay attention. We're analyzing what they're doing. We're looking for something that we can point out to work with, and we're thinking about how can I teach that person as well as everybody else in the room? How do I phrase that? And it requires once again, that's why at the end of the day, all I want to do is get in the bathtub. It requires a lot of mental focus, and I think Johnny is better suited to that because he thinks so fast. I mean, that's the stand-up comic in him, who's always about 3 steps ahead. And I'm much more stand back and sort of look at the bigger picture.
And there is also, I think this is all fairly accurate, and I think one thing that you brought up that's important for everyone to pay some attention to is both Sean and I and other performance coaches will work with you from an actor standpoint. Well, Sean is more strategic and has his notes and his way of doing things, and I'm more in the moment, if you will. It's still some basic acting things, but we go beyond that because Sean started in, what'd you say, 95 or 6 or something?
96.
And I started 90 or 91. In all those years, it was a different world when we started than it is now. But Sean and I, even though we've both done over 1,000 titles in our career, right now, this morning I sent out a letter soliciting work, basically, the same as anybody else. I have some free time on my schedule. I'm going to fill it up. I've got some stuff coming up, but for me, not enough. As we discussed, I waste too much time if I don't fill it. So it's part of our contemporaneous knowledge of stuff that we need to be aware of, how to reach out to publishers. When Sean mentions marketing stuff, all that becomes part of what we need to know and need to be able to share because it's a part of the business now.
Well, it's
And I'm
called show
telling
business.
everyone out there, whether you're Sean Pratt or Johnny Heller or anybody,
No.
Here's James and here's Sherry Galpert. Look, we all have to reach out. We all have to find a way to market, and there's not a fail-safe way to do it. You find what works for you, but it's a part of the business of being a freelance performer.
Mhm.
None of us punch a clock and work. We don't show up 9 to 5 anywhere. We create our business.
Mhm.
We create our opportunities. We fulfill the demands asked of us, and hopefully continue to do so time and time again with the same people who hired us because we did a good job. But to get that out there in the market, that's part of the thing too. Has nothing to do with acting. But if you don't have the acting down, none of the rest is going to matter.
Yeah.
Because why would I hire someone who sucks just because they're on time?
It's funny though. You are right. But it's show business, right?
Yeah.
For a reason. But what I found interesting is and in my first book, To Be or Want to Be, I said the only three things that go into a successful actor are talent, type, and tenacity. Talent meaning your performance talents, but also your business talents. Um, Type meaning understanding your type in the industry, but also understanding yourself as a person and how you respond to the stresses of being a freelancer. And then finally, tenacity, both mental tenacity, physical, mental toughness, and physical toughness, the ability to maintain the process you want to at the tempo you need to create and make a living. But the truth is the way I see it, if you put those three items, talent, type, and tenacity, on a pie chart, talent and type together, in my opinion, constitute maybe a third. The other two-thirds is tenacity. I have friends who, by their own admission, will tell me, they've said, I'm not a great actor. I'm okay. On my best days. But the thing they have is the tenacity to go out and network and be and follow up and just be in the right place at the right time. And they've built careers out of that. They say, I'm never going to be Olivier or Meryl Streep, but I'm going to work all the time because I know how to follow up with people. So yes, the acting portion is fundamental. It's part of the equation. But I feel from because I've had, both in my personal life, people I've known, and then professionally as a coach, I've known plenty of people who were crazy talented, who just flamed out. And
Yeah.
they always ended up flaming out because they sucked at the business side with time
Right.
management,
Right.
money
Yeah.
management, networking, which is why I said, I know that as a performer and a coach, I need to go to these events and I need to talk to people. That doesn't mean it doesn't come with a price tag. I'm just wearing me out.
Yeah.
But I
Right.
accept that. That's just part of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I found this fascinating thing. One of the reasons I'm not a narrator, I mean, I talk occasionally. Did you notice? And I'm okay at that.
I think that's the reason why you're not a narrator. I'm just
Yes. But here's one of the things that people don't, the secondary skill that they must have, and it would take a whole bunch of work for me. I'm not a great sight reader out loud.
Hmm.
So while I've read books my whole life, I love reading, I love knowledge, I love studying, I love learning. But reading out loud accurately at the level required for this business is not something that when I was a kid, we did. My mom, a single parent, and she just never read to me very much. I don't ever remember her reading to me. I didn't read out loud very much. And you get into this and, okay, I have a great voice, pretend that was the thing, that doesn't mean I have the other skills, business skills, the ability to sit and the tenacity to do all the other things. And people don't realize not only do you need to have an okay voice, quote, that sort of thing, you have to be really good at sight reading. You two can read copy the first time at a level that would take me, a month potentially to get to. And that's just one little skill that if you don't have that part of the puzzle, the whole thing's difficult.
One of the challenges I've every so often run into is when I have a visually impaired student or someone who has dyslexia,
Uh-huh.
because the goal in nonfiction is to narrate pretty close to the tempo and in the melody, rhythm, and tempo of your natural speaking voice. So my goal when I'm doing a book on economics by Joseph Stiglitz now. It's a monstrously big book, very dense material. But the goal is to sound like it's coming off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And that requires, you're right, that's a technique though. You can learn it with enough practice, but just some people take it more quickly. When I started, I didn't have that level of technique. I could memorize copy because I was a theater actor, but to perform it cold was a different level technique. Every so often, I will have a student come to me that has a visual impairment or dyslexia, and I have to be honest with them. One of my jobs as a coach is to tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable. And I said, the goal here is you have to sound like you're talking to me. And if you keep breaking up a sentence into little bits and then go to the next part of the sentence, I'll always know you're reading to me.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, no matter how sincere you are about wanting to be a narrator, the person who's going to select you, they have a certain standard they want. And if you can't meet that level of conversational read,
Yeah.
you're just not going to get the gig.
Yeah.
And it's a hard, it's a well, it's just a truism,
Huh.
you
But
know.
and I think
That's
they'll
good.
go ahead, Don.
So that's, but all we're really saying, I'm going to summarize that, is that there are a lot of skills required beyond just having a good voice, and even beyond being a good actor. If you're going to succeed, there are other attributes. And the one thing about going to coaches, either of you, Johnny's going to instantly notice that I don't do my homework. And he's going to be saying, I just told you that same thing 3 weeks ago. And at some point, he's going to say, hey, one of the skills that you have to have is, I gave you direction, you didn't follow up on it, you didn't then do your homework. And you have this all the time. People don't do their homework, and then they come back trying to, fool you. And you notice and you realize, okay, boy, how do I tell them that it's a lot more than just having a good voice? You got to do all this other thing, or you have almost, I don't want to say no chance, you can get lucky for a book
No,
or two.
I when I first started doing one-on-one coaching like this, before I was doing workshops, and then I would do actor coaching, but that was just business coaching. I didn't do acting, although I have. I mean, I've worked with actors all my life, but when I was an acting coach, I would just do the business of show business. When I transitioned into one-on-one, it was a little difficult to dress down a student who's old enough to be your father.
Oh, don't talk about
But
me
I've
behind my
gotten over
back.
that now. You can talk to me every so often. I have to put my foot firmly up one of my students' butts because they're not delivering.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not practicing enough, or they wonder why they're stuck on ACX. And I go, so how are you doing on social media? Are you posting? Well, I did one post 3 weeks ago, and I'm like, you might as well be working in your garage.
Right.
And so I have to. Sometimes I'm a drill instructor, and sometimes I'm an armchair therapist because I do want them to get through the program because not everybody makes it
Yeah.
through because they realize it only gets more challenging as you go, and then people who leave they realize this was a lot more involved than I just wanted to read books in my
Right.
garage, my closet to my kids, and they also a lot of them come from a small C corporate background where
Yeah.
you show up. That's why they're I think for a lot of people in our industry who are getting into it, that obsession about working for the big five publishers comes up all the time. And I say to them, like, so what? I said, I work with Random House. I might only do one book a year with them. I can't build a career off that.
Right.
It's a mix. You have different, smaller publishers. You go out and talk to authors at a writers conference. You solicit stuff through, looking up their books on Amazon or whatever. And it's a combination, and you have to be able to use all of those magic bullets, as it were, to get the work. And then when I have a student who's not delivering on what I know will work, yeah, that's when I've long gotten over any reticence about, and I'm not going to yell at them, but
Right.
vigorously wagging my finger at them, like, you got to get your act together, or this isn't going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go over a couple quick things. Don's mentioned a number of times about people with good voices,
Mm-hmm.
and I've said more times than that, I don't care about your good voice. That's not what anyone's looking for. It's a storyteller.
Right.
You mentioned in your the Venn diagram the talent, tenacity, and what's the third?
Type. Knowing
Huh?
your type. Knowing
Type.
your type. Yeah.
I think, and I don't want to poo-poo the idea of being a good actor. For
Oh,
me,
no, not at all.
no. I just want to make the point so everybody in the world out there knows that's crucial.
Yeah.
And I think that we as coaches, performance coaches, in our different styles and techniques, and every good performance coach does this, helps the student actor, the student realize they're an actor if they don't, and
Yeah.
also helps to give them over time the tools, or to use your word, the techniques, same kind of
Yeah.
thing, that they can use throughout their career. When I was in my acting classes, the 3-year program and stuff, I didn't know while I was learning when I'd be able to call on what I learned. I wasn't even aware of necessarily the learning process. But now I look back and I go, oh, this is that. This is what they meant then. And I think for all of us, for Don, for Sean, for me, we'll say something to a student or have said something to a student 5, 10 years ago. And tomorrow the student go, oh, that's what they meant. That's part of what happens consistently. And I think it's important for everyone who wants to get involved in this to understand that the way the business is now, you can't say, well, I've got time and tenacity, so I can do it. You still have to be able to tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to be an actor. And that's, I just don't want to, I'm not suggesting we didn't, but I want to make it clear.
Yeah.
That's the basis upon which the success of the voiceover industry, audiobooks in particular, rest. Because as soon as we stop caring about acting, you allow machines to take over and tell the story
Mm-hmm.
better than you. And that's a real fear for many people. I mean, I'm at the, pardon me, the back end of the career. I don't know how many years I've got, 10? I don't know. I don't know what I got, but
Months.
what I want to use them. If I got 20, I don't know, but I do know that all my acting, if they want to get an actor for the job, there's a better chance that Johnny will get it than a non-actor
Right.
who has a good voice.
Well, I'm just, to me, if you have, like, the reason why I say tenacity is the most important of the three. If you are tenacious, that also means, one of the things I learned as a young actor, I was a teenager, and I had a director tell me once, they said, never start an artistic endeavor without a personal agenda. Now, the bigger agenda is to always make it the most entertaining event, whether it's a play, a movie, an audiobook. But you need to always have a personal agenda that will make you better at the end of it. So when I did this Agatha Christie mystery last year, this Hercule Poirot thing, my personal agenda was to nail those French and British accents just for myself, to sharpen them back up, because I knew I had more of these Agatha Christie's going forward. With the Stieglitz book, it's about being able to deal with the multisyllabic words and these really long phrases. So the personal agenda is about breath control and scoring.
Yeah.
But the point is that the worst thing you can ever do is just show up and hit the record button and start talking. Okay. And
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is, everybody's guilty of this at some time. There are those days you're just distracted, you get in it, and those are always the hardest sessions because you're not doing your best.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm aware sometimes when you work with a student who's hasn't prepped, who really isn't ready. Let's say someone schedules with me. What is today? Tuesday. Let's say someone scheduled with me for Friday. So Friday comes and the 3:00 session comes up, and they have a piece. They go, I really haven't gone over this very much, meaning they haven't even looked at it. They just sent me something they found. That happens. First, I'm not cheap. I'm $200 an hour. So they spent $200 to spend an hour with me, and they haven't really done it. They haven't even the material they haven't looked at.
No.
So when they do their read, it's a first read. I'm like, why would you do that?
Well,
and
okay.
It's happened to all of us. I promise you. And I never understood it because I'd never sign up for a session with Don or with Sean without prepping for the session or knowing what I wanted to talk about or being prepared, because I don't want to waste their time and I don't want to waste my money.
Yeah.
Sean charges $1,500, $1,600 a minute. It's very expensive.
So as a young drummer, I did go to my instructor, and he set me straight on that quite early. And then I became an instructor, and I see both sides of it. But the one thing that sometimes can come up is if I scheduled something with Sean for next Wednesday, it does put a deadline for me, and I've put $200 on the table, whatever. I put some cash on the table, and what'll happen is I still may be further along at the end of next week, even though I didn't prep for that session, because I put some skin in the game. And so that's why they come to you, Johnny or Sean, sometimes, and they're not prepared. They knew that for them, there is some motivation there, and sometimes they'll do it afterward. And sometimes they'll go, wow, I just wasted $200 because I didn't do my homework. But
Yeah.
sometimes having a deadline, like I'm meeting with Sean next week, I'm meeting with Johnny next week, does help me be better. And a lot of us need some sort of deadline, some specific time. So I do see I'm not justifying people doing that. I think it's a waste of their money too. But
Well, you know, the
Yeah.
couple thoughts on this too is that,
Thanks for sharing, Don.
yeah, and then
just shut the heck up. Okay, I get it,
so
Sean.
so as a strategic coach, they turn in their recordings to me. They turn all their homework in beforehand, and what I
Yeah.
tell them is, I say, look, you know, don't wait till the last minute to do your homework because it's more complex than you think it is.
Right,
And I say, the quality of my feedback is based on the quantity of time you put into the project that you
right,
turned in,
Yeah.
right? In other words, if you just pull it out of your ear to
You can say what you
record
want.
it,
This is YouTube, baby.
okay. So if you just pull it out of your ass,
I
right?
can't believe you said that.
I know. And so if you just throw that in and then the quality of my feedback is going to be, well, this is what I heard. I say, I have to assume this was your best effort because this is what you turned in.
right.
Not only for
I love
recording,
that. I'm going to
but
borrow that. I have
yeah,
to assume this is your best effort.
because that's it. They have to assume,
That's
right?
so cutting. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, it's truth. And so they very quickly learn that, I say, look, record the piece a week out and give it a day. Go back and listen. You want to drop in and fix it? Great. That's good editing practice. You want to do a whole new section of it? Fine, do it. But then make sure it gets in on time because I prep within a tight window for my students for the day.
Yeah.
And but it's ironic. I had to some of the some of the worst students when it came to getting their homework done on time. It's the funniest thing. They've all been teachers or coaches themselves.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
They are the worst. I don't know what it is, but I'm like,
That's why I'm
you
not going
do
to
this
study
for a
with you. Yeah.
living,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. You teach this other thing over here, and like, I know I'm terrible. I'm like, don't do it.
The
It's
dog ate my MP3.
yeah, it's an observation, but it is true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. But getting back to the talent thing, the tenacity. If you always give yourself an internal goal for every project, meaning in this case, I want my character voices to sound more realistic. Well, that's an acting goal. So by stating the goal, like for this Western that's got a lot of action scenes, and my acting goal for my personal agenda here is I really want to sharpen up the dialogue while the action scene's going on. I'm a little stumbly when I did it last time, or whatever. And in the act of being tenacious, you push yourself to be a better performer. So
right.
the payoff comes out the other end, like you were saying, with the acting portion,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know, because we've well, I know Johnny and I've talked about this. When you're working with the same group of people, like in an acting company, or you work with the same performers, on shows over time, there were always those that actor or actors who they've been doing it for so long, they're more or less phoning it in by pulling out their bag of tricks, you know. But the flaw in that is eventually they stultify, they calcify in their performances, and somebody else comes up behind them who's just pushing harder, and they'll get the job instead
Yeah.
because
Right.
they've been demanding that, whatever you want to call it, 1% better, tenacious, whatever, but they're always pushing themselves to be better.
Yeah.
And when you start phoning it in, you're sitting on your butt and you're not going to get any better.
I'll say one thing I've learned about this, and it's interesting because all of us are where we are in our careers, but we still have to. It's important to understand we still have to continue to hustle,
Oh yeah.
keep working, to keep doing things. And the idea that phoning it in is a great line because none of us ever do that. I still make sure I read the book before I record it. And there are people I know who don't. People have done a bunch of, oh, it's that kind of book. I can just knock it out. I'm not comfortable if I haven't read it. I'm just not. And I think it's unprofessional not to have read it. That's my take. That's how I like to go about it. And I understand if it's another, Sean's done 75,000 how-to books. So he says, well, I know this is what we're going to do. So I just need to look up the words I don't know and pronounce them right. But I bet you read it still, don't you?
Yeah, there's a system I teach my students because I have, since my work is, I'm booked out till the middle of summer now. And so I don't get the luxury of reading the entire book. So I have a system that helps me prep the book where I'm more skimming it than reading it. And then the night before I go into the session, I then will look at the piece and go, oh, that's what's happening tomorrow. And that's a better session for me for nonfiction because
Yeah.
you're right. See, it gets back because the narrative is sequential and we have genres. And if I say this is a self-help book, after a while you sort of know what the game is there, as opposed to a
Yeah. Yeah.
history or a business book. Not that they can all be well written or unique, but you understand the structure involved in those genres.
Yes.
So I'm looking through, getting a feel for it page by page, looking for issues, flagging them to talk with the rights holder. What am I going to do about this and this? And making notes about that. But then the night before, I'll go through the chunk that if I know that I'm averaging, say, 30 pages a day, whatever, I'll go over those much more closely before I go into the booth in the morning. Now, fiction, you're right. I read the whole book
Yeah.
because I'm thinking about character voices, plot arcs. Oh, like, oh, that's a funny scene. Make sure you play up the comedy there. Oh, this is a sad, and you're making acting choices.
I think it's funny that people think of you as a nonfiction because that's what they've heard about you, and that you have such a theater background and an acting background. And I also think that's why that makes you one of the better, potentially semi-best, we'll say, nonfiction narrator out there because of your acting background and understanding that you are channeling this person's excitement about whatever they're talking about in a way that sounds natural, and your acting is the foundation for making your nonfiction work be so good.
The way I think of it is every time I like the economics book I'm doing. Imagine somebody comes to you and says, "Okay, you're going to play this character called Hamlet in this play, and you're the lead. Uh, but after we do this production, no one will ever be able to do that play again. So I get to play Hamlet for close to 40 hours on this thing. It's a one-man show,
Yeah.
and it's my one. I mean, when you watch a really good like monologuist or a stand-up comedian who has a narrative in their piece, it's the same thing. It's just extended for hours over time. But I like nonfiction because if it's well read, I get to inhabit that character of the author as a one-person show. And depending on how well they've written the piece and where they go emotionally, I can go into some really wonderful places acting wise.
It's an absurdly long TED Talk. Yeah.
It is an absurdly long TED Talk, but it's also an absurdly long, I say a great fiction narrator has an ear for dialogue, but a great nonfiction narrator has an ear for monologue. Call me Ishmael. Many years ago, and it starts in, let me tell you the story about my grandfather when he came, and suddenly you have this one person show happening. That's the way I approach all of that material.
Do you ever call on your immense background in mime when you do your work?
What do you mean, Johnny? I don't. Right. So I'm constantly using in fact, half the time when I do a retake, it's because I've hit the desk or the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Flying around, but it helps focus the voice. It's that weird thing when you physicalize stuff, your voice becomes sharper in the read.
What I find fascinating, and I have it when Don and I do our shows, and I have it when I work with people, I have it when I talk to my friend Sean, I have it. It's the learning doesn't stop.
No.
And all the time. I mean, Sean has said some things today, and he'll be shocked to know it, but that I find fascinating. I want to look into a little bit later. Instead of just reflection myself. Let me think about. Sean's talking about this. How does that affect me? What am I doing or not doing that he's talking? And does it work for me? In other words, is Sean's methodology something Johnny can do, or something I should stay away? So, and I don't know, but even that thought process is how the learning takes place. And I think for all of us, I know we've all said it, but when Sean and I do a workshop, and we just talked before thing, by the way, if you're interested, we might put together something for early May in New York City. Sean and I, I'll find some dates and set it up, which I think we'll do, but we learn from each other all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We've worked together so much, we instinctively know where the other's going to go and how they're going to say, and who should take the lead in working with Don in this read or not. That kind of stuff is automatic, but every once in a while, rarely in Sean's case, he says something so interesting that I need to take note. And so, well, and I'll write things down. There's something right on my desktop up here that Sean sent me that I use a lot. I don't want to give him a big head and tell him, but you don't need to use every single thing that Sean tells you all the time because it doesn't always fit.
Yeah.
But I promise you that anything you get from him that makes you a better performer, anything you get from Don that makes you a better performer or business person, anything you get from me that makes you a better performer or business person in this business is worth it. You're going to be better, and it may not be that afternoon.
Right.
Oh no, usually it's not.
Right.
That's almost never.
Yeah, it takes time to, sort of filter down.
Yeah.
So
I have a series of lessons toward the end of my curriculum that
Sure
are
you
very,
do.
very challenging. And all my students hate them, but I make them do them. And what I tell them is like, you have to sort of suffer through these assignments because you will eventually encounter them in a real job. So it's so much better to make all the mistakes in class
Right.
where it's safe and then internalize what you learn. So when the gig comes in for foreign languages or math and science or whatever, you immediately build on the previous experience and you do a better job naturally from there.
Here's a quick question. Because David G has a question here.
Yeah, forgive me just to repeat. What's the longest unbroken session in the booth Sean has endured? Can he narrate for 2 hours unbroken? What is his typical session length before a break?
Yeah, no. I actually set the timer on my phone. I never do a session longer than 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Because, like Johnny says, once you're in the booth, there's no law that says you can't take a break. Eventually you reach a point where you're like, I just need a moment. I've hit a hard section so for me, it's more about you in a 60-minute cycle. If I start at the top of the hour, I will literally set my phone for 45 minutes. And then I'll take a 15-minute break, step out, get a glass of water, do whatever I need to do. And then that refresher gets me in there. So no, it's not a marathon in that sense. Yeah. What the marathon is when you have to do 2 or 3 or 4 of those cycles throughout the day.
Right.
Every day.
And
and the amount of mental wear and tear and vocal wear and tear is a lot. That's why those breaks are important. So it's not. I hear people brag about how long they can stay in the booth before they. I'm like, why? That's just
right.
That's gratuitous to me.
Yeah, Johnny, how do you approach that?
I don't put a timer on because I don't like extraneous things in there. I have worked, if I'm really into what's happening, if I really dig it, I can work a couple hours, just go.
Right.
But in a general sense, I think you should take a 5 to 10 minute break every hour, just because it's wearing on you, and you don't always realize that somewhere along the line. Also, I promise within an hour or 2 hours or 3 or whatever the break is, and it's different, by the way, working in your booth than working in Penguin Random House or Macmillan's.
Yep.
Because you go to Macmillan, you're booked 10 to 4, you're working. You can go to the bathroom and get. Macmillan has great coffee, by the way. So anyway, so you go get your coffee, but other than that, you just go. So I've worked 2 hours straight without a break. But if any time in that session I need to be super aware, this is where self-direction comes in, that I know that I've lost it, that I'm thinking about the coffee as opposed to what's happening. So that's why I think
you're tired. You need a vocal break.
I think those breaks are important. I don't like the idea of setting a timer for it. I just like the idea of giving yourself permission to stop.
Yeah.
Because
I have your voice as the alarm. So when the minute you start talking, I have to go.
Hey, Sean.
Exactly.
Tugging on your sleeve.
Hey.
Well, and that is also one of the things that's a big deal. It's a very individual thing. There, Johnny, when he's in the moment on certain things, he may decide to go over that 45-minute mark, even though that his normal might be every 30 minutes. If I'm in the middle of some specific things, I can go much longer. But most of the time, you have to figure out your cycle and start with what they're doing. See if that works. Is 45 minutes too long for you? Do 25 minutes 5 off if that's better for you. Mm-hmm. But you do need to figure out what works for you. And you need to keep continually refining that. And I will say this, as I'm older, the way I work on big, long projects have changed from when I was in my 30s. It's just different the way I'm able to function for a long period of intellectual time focused on a problem or a performance, it
And some
changes.
pieces are just harder to get out. Like a book on economics is much more difficult to narrate.
Well, it
Right.
depends what you're
Just
doing.
get the words out, and then, or you'll have a piece of fiction where you have so much going on character voice wise that your voice starts to get tired.
I
And
want to
you
touch on one quick thing before we give our little goodbyes and things. Rebecca mentioned, look, are the big five directors okay with the 45-minute and the 5-minute break and stuff? When you're at a publisher's studio and you're working, or anybody's studio and the publisher paid whatever, remember that you're the talent. Nothing happens without you.
Yeah.
So if you're working and you need a break, you say, I need a break. Everybody's okay. It's okay. Their job, their whole is everybody's working together to make this the best listen, the most engaging listen the audience can have. If that means if you're booked from 10 to 4 or 5 in a studio, there's lunch breaks, there's coffee breaks, there's bathroom breaks. You said, let me get up for a second. Let's say it's a really emotional thing. You can take a beat. Everybody's cool with that. We are not, it's not a factory that you're working on the assembly line.
They want you to do the best job possible.
Yes.
You know,
Having
when I-
said that,
Right. when I
having
was-
said that,
Yeah.
let's Sean, tell us again about how to sign up for your Saturday dojo and when
Yeah,
it's open.
so, all right. So if you are a student of mine, current or former, please send me an email, seanpratt@comcast.net, to get in. I only take 5 students. I'll send you the information about how to prepare. It's $150 per the session. It's on my website right now as an event. So that's seanprattpresents.com under events. If I don't see you, I might see you also at Voiceover VO Atlanta on the audiobook cruise. If you'd like to know more about what I do as a coach, you can shoot me an email again, seanpratt@comcast.net. I'll send you some information, but I also have the same information on my website under coaching. I do a free consultation to talk about what it is I teach and how I do it. And yeah, that's what I'm up to right now.
Okay.
Did I get that URL right that I just put on the screen? Can you see it there, Sean?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So for
And
everybody,
then, so as I mentioned, I haven't worked out dates yet, but Sean and I talked just before we started. We might put together. So we'll figure out. So Sean and I will do a weekend fiction, nonfiction workshop here in New York City, and then the next big thing I know of, I won't be at VO Atlanta. I'm not going on a boat. The SS Petrie. I'm not doing it. There is, however, the New England Narrator Retreat, October 13th through 16th. The 3 fellows you see right here will be there. You can see us live. We're much taller in person than you would imagine. No, we're not. And Don, what do you got coming up?
let's see. So next week we have Terry Daniel here, big time voiceover gentleman, and I have another project that I've been just working my brains out on, and I keep doing it, and I have an extra 40 hours a week that I'm putting in beyond my normal schedule right now. Crazy stuff, staying up late, getting up early, having a good time. I'll talk about that next week as well. So,
all right. Well, thank you, Sean Pratt. You know I love you, best friend forever. I'd say, well, I tease you unmercifully. I love you, so you're the best. So,
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Any final words, Sean? Anything that you want people to get in touch with you for?
No, I think we covered it all. Just y'all have a good day. Enjoy the video, and if you have any follow-up questions, please send me an email. I'm happy to answer them.
Fantastic. All right. We appreciate.
If you guys have liked the show, please comment, please share. Actually, don't hit the like, just say something, because that's better.
Yeah.
How about this? If you really liked what we did, I'm Sean, it's Johnny, and Don. If you didn't like what I did, my name is Scott Brick. So.
Fantastic. All right, we'll see you all next week. And as always, we look forward to seeing you on the wires. Have a great day.